Welcome everybody. We are back in 30 for 30. How are you today? It's a beautiful day here in the UK and I've done my exercise, done some other stuff, ready for some live streaming. Part 21. Can you believe it? Part 21. That's right, isn't it? Yes, part 21 of the 30 for 30 series. We're working through our task. Are we over halfway through this task? I reckon we are. We've created our sheets. Now we're looking to move some data around. So that's what we've got to start thinking about, how to select data, or at least to define the data we want to move around, and then how to move our data. So which of our foundational concepts is going to help us do that? That's what we're going to try to do today. So welcome to everybody in the chat who's with us. Welcome Lee Williams and Adrian, two of our members. Good to have you with us. Welcome Ian Box. Welcome Frank. Welcome Lee S. Going down the chat. Welcome Ian Lamb. Ian, I got your email. Ian sent me a brilliant email saying that he's delighted with the success he's had with XLVBA, and the neighbors are complaining because he's celebrating too hard when the VBA goes well. So well done, Ian Lamb. Jasmine, welcome. Alistair, welcome. Jorgen is with us. Let's salute the general, please. And who else do we have? Kassem is with us from Lebanon. Wonderful, beautiful part of the world. Welcome, Kassem. Peter is with us from Liverpool, also a beautiful part of the world. Phil is with us for the first live. Welcome, Phil. And you said you caught up on the series, so well done and welcome. Klaus is with us. Joanna is with us, also from the UK. Anup and DC. DC at the bottom. DC says, I had the browser minimized and your voice scared me. I better scare you, DC. You spent enough time listening to me over the past couple of years. Welcome, everybody. Good to have you with us. So you can go ahead, download the download file. And where have we got to? Well, we've got our main routine and we've got to a position where we can just click the button. And what's it going to do? It's going to create the sheets. Well, it's actually going to delete all the sheets first, because remember, we've called a routine to delete the sheets first, and then we're going to go through the process of creating the sheets. So this is good stuff, and already the macro is doing a big amount of work for us. I mean, creating new sheets and naming new sheets can be very clicky, particularly if you're not using keyboard shortcuts. We can see them all beautifully lined up there at the bottom of the file, but what's missing? Well, there's no data on these sheets. So we've got to think about moving this data around. And as always, when we're trying to do something new in VBA, let's do something easy first. So in the end, we want to have all this information. So probably not the cumulative column. I think somebody pointed that out. But we do want the information from columns B to column E going into the spreadsheet. So that we can go to any of these sheets and all of the entries are going to be listed there. That's where we want to get to. But it's quite it's a more difficult thing anyway to select 4 cells. So to begin with, let's just select a single cell and let's try to get these all stacked up. That's another difficult thing to do, isn't it? Because if we want to stack up the entries, we've got to think about what's another one of our principles, position control. So as always, as you're talking it through, realizing the difficulties. So we're dealing with that conceptualization. Let's go back to the code and how are we going to adapt this code to get it working? So after we've created the sheet, if we do the sheet creation, we want to deal with transferring the data over here. So this is going to sit inside the loop, of course. So these 4, once again, our annotations helping us. These 4 annotations here, I'm going to put them inside the loop. Just missed one of the inverted commas there. Now I can clean up this inverted comma. So make sure you download the file and you're working along with me. We don't need to record any code here. So I can delete that annotation. And so which cells are we working with? Well, in our loop, we can see we're working with column D. So hopefully we can just do something like this. Is it going to be as easy as this? Let's have a look. Okay, let's say active sheet.range. In fact, let's say sheets target sheet. dot range. So sheets target sheet. Let's remind ourselves what that means. So if you've got some code that you don't understand in a VBA routine, well, if it's a variable, I can tell this is a variable because there's no speech marks around it. At least that's one clue that it's a variable. So we can go back to the top and we've got our annotations here. So this is storing the category name, and we create a new sheet and then we name the sheet using the category name. So we're just saying on the sheet that contains the category name, let's say dot range, let's say D4, C4 we'll go for. Equals, and then what do we want it to equal? Again, some slightly tricky referencing here. So it's going to be the data sheet, of course, and then how are we going to define the cell? And we should be able to recycle some of the code we're using. So we've got this ends, this counter variable here. So we should be able to copy this across. Copy this down rather. Okay, there we go. So how about that? The syntax looks okay. DC's got some ugly spaghetti code of the day. Have you been working on that code today? DC looks interesting. And what's this doing? This is going to, let's say, transfer data, transfer column D data into, let's say, destination sheet. The destination sheet being that sheet that has the name of the category. How about that? Okay, doing my sense check. Does it look reasonable? We've got the variable name there. That looks okay. Then we've got the data sheet. Yep, we've definitely got a sheet in the file that's called data. And then, yep, this is the current cell that we're working with. Yep, looks reasonable enough. Right, what I'm going to do is put the breakpoint in. So just click in the margin there. Then I'm going to run the code and hopefully we'll be able to see this information going in. So I'm going to hit the analyze button now. Hi, Andrew. How are you? Welcome. Hitting analyze, and we've stopped at that breakpoint. So the code's going to stop at that breakpoint if you put the breakpoint in. Hit the F8 key. So in cell C4 here, we're expecting something to appear. Is it just going to be the word dog? I think that's what it's going to be. Okay, and there it is. Let's do the next one. So we're going to create a new sheet here. I'm just hitting the F8 key just outside your screenshot. You'll be able to see the code kind of working down. And then what's going to happen here? Well, the word client payments should appear, yep, there in cell C4. So it seems to be working well. So as usual, using our debugging skills, just taking an intermediary step, not trying to get it all done in one go, and then using our debugging skills, in this case, the breakpoint and the F8 key. You can also go to debug and step through the code and understand what's going on. So I'm going to remove this breakpoint now. Should be able to just play the code, hit the play button at the top. We've got analysis complete. That's the message box we put in the last session. And we've got dog there, client payments. Yep, so on each sheet we have a single entry there. Okay, so now I've got a tricky problem for you. So what's happening there? Well, every time we have an entry in the dog category, Excel is just overwriting that cell. So it looks like there's only one entry. Actually, Excel has overwritten each of these entries another time, multiple times, with the same value, with the same piece of data. So it looks like it's just happened once, but it would have been overwritten. That's because we've kind of hard coded our positioning here with this line of code. So my question is, how are we going to stack these entries up? Difficult one. How are we going to get these entries stacking up? Difficult one to do with position control. And I'm going to do one thing to begin with that's going to make this easier for us. I'm going to go ahead and say, yep, just in here, let's say sheets, target sheet. We'll see in a second why this is important. Sheets target sheet dot range C3 we'll go for this time, equals the variable name, and then I'm going to say entries here. Okay, so have a look at this line of code. Then what is this line of code doing here? Well, it's only going to run when we create a sheet. This little conditional statement, the code in here, is only going to run when we create a new sheet, of course. And then on C3 on the new sheet, it's going to put the value of the variable, which is the category name. So dog, client payment, fuel, and then entries. So this is going to be like a title at the top of the sheet. And this is going to help us do the position control as well, as we're going to see. So what happens now, I'm just going to play the code. Quick sense check here. Play the code, hit the F5 key. Okay. Then what do the sheets look like? Okay, so dog entries, dog, client payments, client payment, fuel, etc., etc. So yeah, maybe we'll look at changing the formatting on this so that it looks more like a title. You know, that's something you could do yourself, but we'll probably look at that in a future stream. So now we've got a title, and then underneath the title, we've got an entry there. So this makes the position control a bit easier. Okay, any ideas from the chat here? So we've got Anup. Do we need an offset control for each sheet? That would be possible. We could even have a formula for each sheet, not easily done, but possible, a formula for each sheet telling us how many entries are on each sheet using a formula such as count A. So for example, if I just have count A like this, that's telling us there's 2 entries on the sheet. So if you could define the range and set a limit to the range where the data would go in, then you could do some kind of formula-based solution. An immediate problem that comes to mind is that these sheets are being created. So to get a formula that's going to point to the sheets before they're being created, we'd have to use indirect or something. It would get quite complicated there. But the fundamental idea of using count A, a formula, to work with offset in the VBA editor, that is one way we could do the positioning. Any other ideas in the chat? Lee says, yeah, have a loop. This is another possible concept. So I'm loving these ideas. Have a loop moving the data down the worksheet. Yeah, we could say select this cell or start on this cell, and then what kind of loop would this be? We've got our 3 loop types. We could have a do until loop and just tell Excel to go down another row until it gets to an empty row. That's also a possible approach. Is there a more kind of succinct, a really clean approach to doing this? Yeah, Frank is also saying do while. So again, that's a looping approach. What about, just give the chat another few seconds. It's always quite difficult this for me because I think you're about 30 seconds behind me. So Frank's got an idea. Alistair says, okay, Ian is on the money. Ian Box. I mean, this is my idea anyway, to use .end Excel down. Alistair says, use a cell in the target sheet that contains the offset to be used and write the next row. So for example, add the offset into D3. Also possible. Yeah, so Alice is talking about storing a value. So to begin with, it would be 0 because there's no values in the sheet. Then we could increment that value up and store it on a worksheet. Also possible. This shows there's some very strong conceptual thinking here. I'm suggesting we use .end Excel down to do this. That to me is the most elegant, or at least the fastest and sharpest way of doing this. So let's do it. We're not going to try to do it all at once. Let's try to create a short routine here just to test this out and see if we can get this working. Let's call this row test. And let's say, yeah, message box here. Okay. Well, what's going to happen if we say to Excel, start on C4, and then go to the end, what's going to happen here? Range C4, range XL down. Do we need 2 brackets there? Okay, so as it stands, XL is going to start on C4. And then we're doing dot end XL down. So how do we kind of recreate dot end XL down on the keyboard? Well, if you go Control and down cursor on the Windows PC, Control and down arrow, that's going to do what dot end XL down would do. So I think when we run this code, what's going to happen? We'll either get an error or we'll get the last row in the sheet, and we get the last row in the sheet. Okay. It's not quite what we want, is it? We don't want data going down at the bottom of the sheet, particularly when that's a million rows away. But this is where our little addition of having a title could help us, because we can now use C3 rather than C4. And now what's going to happen when we play this code, hit the F5 key, and we can see, yeah, we've got row 4 there. So that's what we'd want. In fact, we wouldn't want row 4. We'd be able to just put +1 on here, and that will give us the next empty row, of course, because we could see we'd want the next data to go not in row 4, but in row 5. So now if I play this code, hit the F5 key, we can see we've got 5 here. So if we have multiple entries for dog, play the code, what row are we looking for now? We're looking for row 13 now. Play the code, and we have row 13 there. So I think we could use XL down to get this job done. And our logic would be, well, if there's no entries in the sheet, so if there's nothing in C4, then use row 4. If there is something in C4, then use the dot end XL down syntax to find the next empty row. Yeah, Frank says he copied data into row 3 to the other sheets as a start. Yeah, so this little title gave us a starting point, which made it easier to use dot end XL down here. So we need to do positioning. Okay, positioning, find next empty row. Empty row. So we do have an annotation down at the bottom here. What's happened here? Yeah, we do have an annotation here that relates to that. So we did consider it. This copy in, we don't need any more. How to do this? So we could do this without a variable, but I'm going to use a variable to do this. I think that's going to give us the cleanest and easiest to understand code. Let's call it next row. And what kind of variable would this be? Well, integer would work, but we've used long variables previously. Next empty row in destination sheet. So a nice clear annotation that's going to help you when you come back to the code. So next row as long, of course. Let's get that syntax right. Okay, so then here, and I'm going to simplify the syntax here by using in, with, and end with. That just avoids having to repeat syntax. And I'm looking at what I'm doing and thinking I'm going to have to repeat this target sheet syntax several times. So I'm just going to use with and end with. That avoids me having to type it in, makes it easy to understand, also makes execution more efficient. So let's say if dot range, so this dot is important because it links whatever I'm writing now to the beginning of the with statement here. So if dot range, and then let's say C3, C4 it would be, equals nothing, then next row, our variable name, of course, that we created at the top here. Next row equals 4. And then we're going to use a 3-line conditional statement here. So this is just a conditional statement, of course. So what was it? Session 4 or 5, we did conditional statements. Otherwise, we want next row equals dot range C3. So using the same syntax I just used in our little experimental routine, dot NXL down, dot row, and then we need the +1 on the end there. So let's see what happens now. Sense checking this, and then we've still got the line of code, of course, to put the data in, but now we want to use our next row variable here, and that should complete the mechanism. That should give us something dynamic, which is going to actually build this list so that these entries stack up in a list here. Okay, I'll leave it on the screen for a second for you to copy it up. Question from Lee. 33 viewers today, excellent, 5 likes, thank you so much. Silly question, blonde moment, don't worry. But am I right in thinking this would work as you wouldn't have the issue of blank rows from the main data sheet as you are moving data? Ooh, that's a good point, Lee, actually. Yeah. No, that wouldn't be an issue. If we had a blank row, it would just, yeah, it would make a cell blank. Would that matter to us? I'm not sure. That might be problematic. So maybe, I mean, we're lucky because we've got good data quality here. We don't have any blank rows. But if you did have a blank row, if that was potentially a risk or likely, we'd have a conditional statement here, maybe saying if the value in this cell, which is the data cell we're currently working with, equals blank, then don't do any of this. You know, don't do any of the positioning, which would just stop anything happening and we'd continue through the loop. Or you could do something like flashing up a message box to the user saying there's a problem in this row. You could use the counter variable. There's a problem in this row, and do you want to fix it? So a good question. And yeah, those data quality issues where you have blank rows or you have inconsistent spelling, things like that, they can be a nightmare for the VBA editor. Everything is fixable with VBA. Everything in Excel is fixable with VBA, but it does create, it could be problematic, particularly for beginner programmers. So with data quality, what's the main thing to focus on? It's data entry, data validation. Lee is one of our members. About the 4th or 5th Members Monday, we had a session on data entry in Excel, all of the techniques that are available to help us with data entry, things like data validation, input messages, setting up a spreadsheet properly, all kinds of things. So it's when we're doing the data entry that we really try to guarantee the data quality. I always say prevention is better than cure. Yeah, so it's much easier to put data validation on in the first place to get the data quality rather than having to cure it later using VBA, although it's perfectly possible in VBA. I've done plenty of work like that. Right then, so let's use our breakpoint again. And let's play the code and let's see if we're close here. Syntax error. Hopefully everybody at home spotted that one. Just trying to keep you on your toes. Here we go. Analyze. Variable not defined. Okay, again. Syntax error here. So that's option explicit in action. That second error, that's option explicit, going through, checking the spelling and saying, I don't recognize this variable name. Good stuff. Analyze. Okay, seems to have worked this time. So I'm going to hit the F8 key. So what are we expecting to happen? Does C4 equal blank? Yes, it does. So we should go into the first part of the conditional statement. If the condition is met, as we've defined, the condition defined in the first line of the conditional statement. If the condition is met, we're going to go into the first section of the conditional statement. So next row equals 4, and we can check that by just hovering the cursor over the variable. And then what's going to happen here, sense checking this code looks reasonable, and we have dog coming in there. Let's play this again. So on the second, on the client payment sheet, so expecting the same thing to happen here. Okay. So it looks reasonable enough. So shall we just go for Control S and then analyze, remove the breakpoint, just click on the breakpoint in the margin to remove it, hit play, and then what's happened to us there? Just saw something stacking up. Right, so we've got all these dog entries, all these client payments entries, all these fuel entries, hobbies entries. Okay, so let's take dog and let's do a quick check here. So Control Shift and down on the Windows PC. I just want to know the number of dogs we've got here. Cheers, DC. See you soon. A pleasure as always, as you say. So we've got 36 here. Okay, I am getting a message saying we don't have enough data to stream smoothly at the moment. So if it's not streaming smoothly, please just hit the refresh button on your browser. Okay, how can we quickly check this? I'm going to use a COUNTIF formula. Okay, let's go dog here. So equals COUNTIF. So I want to check the number of occurrences of dog here. So the range, Control Shift and down. So D4 to D504 for the range, and then the criteria. We've got dog here. Okay, then we've got 36 occurrences there. So on the dog sheet, we have 36 occurrences, so I'm happy with that. What about client payment? No, there was one where there were, yeah, let's go for fuel just because there's millions here. So Control Shift, down arrow. At the bottom of Excel, it says 149. Go back to the data sheet. Going to put some absolute references on here. So just click in the formula, hit the F4 key. And then let's go for fuel. Whoops. Fuel, and then should be able to copy this down now. So Control D. And we've got 149 there. And you can continue this checking. You can check all of the categories. How many are there? There's 9 or 10 categories, maybe a couple more. And of course, if it's worked, then every line we have in the data set should be represented somewhere on one of the sheets. So if you add up the number of entries across all of the sheets, then it should add up to the total number of entries in the first sheet, which is 500. Control Shift and down arrow there. So seems to be working. Yeah, so far so good with this task. What's the next challenge? So something for you to think about for before tomorrow. And let me know in the chat any final questions today, guys. Let me know in the chat. I'll deal with those before we finish. At the moment, still not particularly useful, is it? Just to have the entries stacked up like that. So we've got to think, how do we take all of the information across? We don't want to just take column D. We want to take column B to column E. So that's going to take some, what do we call that? Well, that's position control. And what's the concept that's going to help us here? I don't have this one written down. It's going to be range, range, range. It's probably going to help us here, although maybe not. There's different ways of doing this. So you can choose the best concepts and the best concepts and the best building block to help you there. Welcome, Maria. Better late than never. Good to see you. Peter says, yes, use offsets or offsets. Phil says, is it case sensitive? This, I think you're talking about the COUNTIF formula here, Phil. I'm guessing no. Yeah, it's not case sensitive, Phil. The COUNTIF formula. So yeah, a good example there of doing one thing two ways, doing it in VBA, using formulae on the spreadsheet to do the same thing. You know, we're probably not going to keep these formulae. We're definitely not going to keep these formulae, but they're useful for testing. You know, a great guiding idea in testing is do the same thing two ways or maybe three ways. You know, we could do this with a pivot table as well. That's prove to yourself that it's absolutely right. Before you put it in front of your customer, you've got to be convinced that it's absolutely right. Any further questions in the chat, guys? Now, if you're enjoying this, you're going to love, here comes your advert. You're going to love Members Monday. Got a little summary of the benefits here. Had a great session yesterday, Members Monday. It was called Chris's Data Analysis Secret Weapons. So this is not super complicated stuff. These are formulae in Excel that not a lot of people use that are so useful for data analysis. That's why I call them my data analysis secret weapons. I'm always using these on client projects. I find my customers love them. So we did that video last night. We did a whole hour. Lee was there. Jasmine was there. Ian, were you there? We had, 10 over 10 members at some point. But all of these videos are recorded. So if you go ahead and get a membership now, you're going to get access to that video and the 18 previous members Mondays. You also get access to a content navigator that's going to help you navigate the content. So if you're looking for help with a particular topic, you should be able to find it, and it's going to take you to the specific points on the videos to get help with that specific topic. Also get access to our Facebook group and just the community. Hang out with me, hang out with the other members. We've had a really good atmosphere in Members Monday, members bouncing ideas off each other. It's your Excel VBA learning community. Okay then, guys, no further questions in the chat. So I'm looking forward to seeing you again tomorrow, which will be number 22. Remember your homework. See if you think about the little challenge I set you there at the end. And we've got a final question from Phil. Phil says, both VBA and COUNTIF, would it see dog and dog as the same? I think so, Phil. I think the cases don't matter, but you can test it yourself, but I think the cases don't matter in that case. Right then, guys, take care. Go and enjoy the weather if you can. Don't be mixing with other people. Go and enjoy the weather. Get yourself outside for a little walk, and I'll see you tomorrow, same time for more 30 for 30. Take care.